Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of MGR Unplugged. And if you remember last week, I actually said that we wouldn't have an episode this week because I was going to be traveling, which I am still tomorrow. I'm leaving tomorrow, Thursday. But
I said, hey, we can squeeze one in
which
today.
kind of threw a wrench on my plans because I have a jam day today. But anyway, it's good. We have a few topics that we wanted to discuss, and we want to make it quick. We always say that, and it ends up being a little long, but hopefully we'll make it flow fairly smoothly today. So, anyways, without further ado, David is with me. You already heard him. So, David, you and I were talking before about Google. Obviously, Google is always in the news, and it's funny because last week we did mention that Google, Facebook, and all these other companies are trying to become their own or develop behind the scenes their own e-commerce platforms and trying to draw more customers to within their ecosystem and keep them there for our shopping needs. And now Google basically is developing some e-commerce plays already that that are already kind of in the news.
Yeah, Google. It's funny. I make fun of Google as far as being, of all the big companies, the worst with their strategy in recent years. Mm-hmm. But in this case, I think they have a really solid strategy. And what they're doing is Google knows that, Facebook and Amazon, especially in the e-commerce space, are very, very dominant. And they want to find their little angle into it and how they can explore the space. And the two biggest things that they're doing, or I should say the biggest thing that they're doing that has resulted in different things that they've done recently is that they are trying to fill the gaps, find the holes in especially Amazon and Facebook as to where they're not able to provide the best online experience. And so a couple examples of that they've done recently that I wanted to mention is first, they acquired a company called Pointy. And this company, most people probably have not heard of them, but what they are is essentially a IoT, Internet of Things company that provides physical devices that let retail stores basically add any of their physical inventory into Google Shopping digitally.
So they basically do via API. I mean, they link into their stores and then they can get off the database. Basically, what Google did with hospitality when they were buying this software or API, so they can draw into the booking engines for different hotels and then draw into their meta search.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges for really most companies that sell consumer goods, but especially companies that are trying to handle retail and e-commerce, is inventory management and tracking. Mm-hmm. And what Google is doing is trying to create the infrastructure so that you can have a fully unified inventory across all of your e-commerce and retail store, and then especially make Google Shopping a place where people can go that has unique products that are not available on Amazon or anywhere else, because they're especially targeting lots of mom and pop shops that sell unique things that you can only get in that store. But say there's a mom and pop shop, we're in Phoenix, and there's something in California that I want. I have no way of what am I going to do? Drive to California to get it? Now I can go on Google Shopping and buy it directly from them.
So how does Google make money from this? They get a commission like everything else? Or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they make money through Google Shopping. They want people to buy Google Shopping ads, so they're trying to promote that platform. Mm-hmm. And then the customers of Pointy pay for this product. And so Google is kind of, I heard someone the other day give a good analogy. They're trying to be the AWS of digital e-commerce and retail, where they're trying to be the infrastructure company. They say maybe we won't necessarily be the front end like Amazon is, but we will be the back end infrastructure of the retail e-commerce mix, because there's a lot of problems still to be solved in that space as far as the actual back end technicalities of it. There's a lot of struggles, and they're trying to solve these things.
But I see this working a little bit like we're very familiar with hotel industry and airplanes and airline industry and flights and travel and everything else. So all the hotels, for example, are trying to do like book direct and save, because obviously they can book through online travel agencies or any other method where they charge up to 30% commissions, so sometimes even more, and obviously they make less money. So will the retailer now be in the same situation where it's like now Google is jumping in the middle and people are going to Google to buy their products versus buy direct from us and save, or basically we make more money?
What their exact strategy will be down the road is kind of unclear. I'm sure they're weighing their options, but they're trying to right now make available what is not currently available. And it's similar to what they did in the hotel space, because hotel inventory is a very complicated thing.
Right.
You know, and they've been able to master that. And now they're trying to make regular product inventory and master that as well. Because another thing that they're doing after the Pointy news, that was 2 weeks ago, came out, this week they announced that they are creating a new section for apparel, which is another thing that's very difficult to manage the inventory for. So they're trying to basically build the back-end infrastructure for managing the supply chains of both the digital and physical retail economy. And if they can be the ones that everyone relies on, then they will continue their status as a toll booth, so to speak, on e-commerce. So that's kind of their goals, and that's something that they're doing. Whether they will be successful, they're not the only ones either.
Right.
We'll see. But yeah, that's kind of their plans.
What's the timeline for this? Is this something that they are announcing that they're going to launch, or they're just kind of...
Well, Pointy they acquired, and Pointy is just a company. They're still going to operate as they are. Now the question is how Google will integrate them. Will Pointy remain mostly independent, or will it be fully integrated into Google? I think it'll probably be fully integrated into Google, and then maybe even the Pointy name will go away, and it'll just be Google infrastructure or whatever they end up calling it. But it's really interesting to see. And then we talked a little last week about what Facebook is doing, and I don't want to get into that again, but I wrote a whole kind of very in-depth explanation that's going to go out today on our newsletter. Well, it'll already be out by the time this podcast goes out. So if you haven't subscribed to that, be sure to subscribe, because I go a little more in depth on these things.
Right.
But that's what Google's up to right now.
Very good. You just mentioned Facebook, and it's funny that Facebook announced last year, I think it was October, November, that we're going to have a new look for their interface, or their main console or the main pages, a new design, more modern. It was actually due for a design for a facelift, because Facebook is basically looked the same since almost day one, except for a few changes. But obviously they changed the logo a little bit.
The biggest problem is that they keep adding more and more features, which in a way is good, but it also just made it so complex and messy and busy.
It's a lot of stuff that sometimes you don't want to see, and actually it's kind of hard to clean up your space so you can select what windows to see. But anyways, they came up with that, and it's been kind of like nobody has seen it. And then it looks like they're now launching it, even though it's by invitation only. And invitation means that you can even opt into that. You will see individuals are not so much at this point, but I think pages, they're already seeing the new look or being offered. And they send basically, like it happened to us, that's what I'm talking about it. But yesterday I was on our own Facebook page, the MGR one. And when I went there, it says, would you like to switch over to a new look? And I was like, oh, this is the new look. And so I clicked, and there it was, the new look. And I was going to put it up on the screen, but there's a lot of convoluted stuff. So you guys can look it up later. Or I'll put some screenshots on in the show notes. But
well, it's funny because you said, I didn't see it. You saw it first, and you said, it looks kind of like Twitter.
Yeah.
And then you opened it for me. And I said, is that it? I said, that it looks exactly like the desktop version of Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. So what they did is they have like a center column with all your feed and everything else, just like Twitter with your post, your news feed. And then on the right-hand side, you have a bunch of contacts, and it tells you who is on or not with the little green dot next to them. Yeah. And then on the left, you have your menu of whatever your page has.
It's
your page
similar
menu.
to the old one. It's much cleaner, much nicer.
And the design is kind of clean. All the boxes have like round corners.
Yeah.
And
I definitely think it's a lot better than the
Yeah,
old one.
and obviously, Facebook, like Twitter, and every other app these days is optimized for mobile. So on mobile, you don't see all these other sidebars that we had, and you just see your news feed and everything else. So I don't know. The funny thing is that Facebook also has a dark mode, which apparently now is the fashion. Everybody has to have a dark mode. Apple came with their new phones with the dark mode, and then Facebook also, you can toggle back and forth.
I'm gonna be a contrarian.
I don't like it. I mean, I use the dark mode.
I don't like it. It hurts my eyes, and people say that the light mode hurts their eyes.
It's funny because I saw the same thing, and when I got my the new iOS on the iPhone, I switched over to a dark mode just to be a snob, basically, and I didn't like it, but I said, I need to get used to it, and then I kind of got used to it, but then I realized I'm forcing myself to this, and I don't really like it, especially for websites. And the only advantage is when you are looking at your phone in a dark place or at night or something, then it helps, because then even if you minimize your screen brightness, still it's too bright, and the dark mode in those cases, it helps.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only case that I think would be cool is if you could say, like, automatically set your phone so that after 10 p.m. it goes to dark mode. So if you turn on your phone at night, it's in dark mode. But for me personally, people say that it hurts their eyes to look at the white screen. No, when I read, like, I tried Twitter dark mode because Twitter's had dark mode for a long time, and it hurts my eyes. Like after I literally feel like I'm getting a headache looking, and
it's a little more
dark
straining.
web pages too.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. Obviously, it doesn't really matter.
It helps when you are, like, obviously in the movie theaters, every time you go, it says turn off your phones and all that stuff. And you are in a movie theater and you are looking at your phone or checking some messages, you are doing it in dark mode, it's going to be less bright.
Right. There's specific cases where maybe it's better, but for me, like everyday use, I don't like it, honestly.
So anyways, Facebook has the option now for dark mode, which actually is funny because I just read that WhatsApp is also coming with their own dark mode. So pretty much everybody's going to have a dark mode or bright mode or whatever. So if you're a fan of that, good for you. All right. So I wanted to talk about Netflix too, because you too, but I mean, I always follow the stock market a little bit, and I like to see, we were talking last year, which looks like far away, but it was just last month. But we were talking last quarter, actually, about the streaming video wars and everything else. Disney Plus launched in December, as we know. And then, obviously, we have all the other Plus services. Is it Apple Plus? What is it called?
Apple TV Plus.
Apple TV Plus, right, also launched, and they have their own programming and everything else. And then we were kind of concerned about how all these streaming video wars and everything were going to affect Netflix. Obviously, loss of some of the programming that was coming from Disney and all that stuff that Disney said, okay, we're going to take over that. And then, obviously, Netflix has a lot of their own programming in place. We just were talking about the Irishman that was actually nominated for Academy Awards and Golden Globes and everything. So as it went, I think it was yesterday, Netflix reported numbers, and their subscriber base went up by almost about, I was looking at the numbers, I think it's over almost 9 million streaming subscribers, 8.7 or something like that, which actually increased. It was above expectations. I think they were expecting to get like 7.5, and they got like another extra million, which is good for Netflix. The stock actually is down a little bit, and that's because they also said that they face much more competition now. Surprise, surprise, because they have other services that are now competing with the same budget, basically.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on that? As far as now that we have maybe a month or a month and a half or 2 months of the other services like Disney Plus consolidating and Apple TV Plus and so forth, where do you think this is going to settle? Because at the end of the day, the consumer needs to pay for these services, whether it's $15 to Netflix and another 10 or something, whatever it was, Disney Plus the Apple TV. Yeah, they started low and they'll probably increase it at some point. But
right now, their bundle where you get Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus is $12 a month.
Right,
$13 a month.
Other products, and then on top of that, you have the Amazon Prime, which obviously comes with shipping and everything else too. But you have the service that's about $10 a month, or you pay yearly, and it's $120 or something these days. I would just bill for that. So, anyways, at the end of the day, the consumer needs to decide: are we going to start paying 15 plus 15 plus 10 plus 12, or we choose one or the other depending on what's their favorite programming. So Netflix said that they expect more headwinds ahead, just because there's a little bit of consolidation taking place, and actually that's what caused the market to, or their stock to go down a little bit. I mean, not much, but just investors are saying, maybe we should start rethinking this.
Yeah, I think that there's this like weird idea that people have that it's like people are only going to have one or two streaming services and that's it. I think that's wrong. I mean, I think there's room for people to have Netflix and Disney and Hulu and a lot of things. You know, the ones that I'm more concerned about or skeptical of would be the ones that are basically way further behind and don't have much of an enticing factor to them, like a CBS All Access or Time Warner's new thing. Like, I mean, HBO Max is coming, which is going to be $20 a month or something.
Right.
And I don't know if people want to spend $20 a month, but this idea that, people are going to subscribe to Disney Plus and then leave Netflix, I think is wrong. I mean, maybe there's a small percentage of people who do that, but I think the majority of people, because you have to think, who is the market for Disney Plus, for example? Mostly families, right? Families, parents with kids, right? That's the market. I don't think that those parents are going to say, oh, well, because I'm getting Disney Plus for my kids, I'm going to unsubscribe from Netflix. Like, I think that's stupid. I don't think that's going to happen. Plus, okay, say you get the Hulu, ESPN, Disney Plus bundle, which is $13 a month, and then the Netflix bundle, $26. Okay, so it's $26 a month when people were just paying $100+ a month for cable. You know?
Right, but the thing is that probably still paying for cable in addition to all this.
Yeah, I actually think that the bigger challenge for Netflix is not going to be necessarily the other streaming services as competition. I think it's going to be just getting people to drop their cable subscriptions and legacy subscriptions for Netflix instead. Because there's a few things that cable still has that Netflix doesn't. The primary being live sports. Mm-hmm. That's where Hulu and YouTube TV and these other services come in, where Hulu, YouTube TV, other services have live sports. So I just think this idea that because Disney Plus is successful, that Netflix is going to lose is wrong. I think it's not zero sum. I don't think people are going to choose streaming service.
Yeah, it's not going to be like that. But at some point, you need to put a cap on your monthly expenses for basically TV viewing, and
but I don't think
when you realize you're paying for your local, even the most basic cable bundle with your local TV stations, and then you start looking into maybe Netflix and Amazon Prime, maybe, which everybody has because of all the other advantages, and then you have the Disney bundle with ESPN and Hulu, and now you have maybe Apple TV Plus, and I mean, you start adding everything, and you're easily spending $150 a month or more, depending on the market. But that's a lot of money just for watching shows,
Yeah, but that's what people
and
already
YouTube too. How much is YouTube? The subscriber service?
50, I think.
50
or 45, 50
a month?
Yeah, but you get it basically. It's like a cable replacement, basically.
Okay, so that is the cable replacement. You get your local TV stations to there and all that stuff, including sports and everything. Yeah. Okay, wow. All right.
So if you decide, okay, $50 a month for YouTube TV, and then I'll get the Hulu Disney bundle, that's $13, and then Netflix $13, that's $76 a month. Okay, that's way less than you were paying for cable. Most people were paying $150 a month for cable. And it's just that there's this idea that streaming is going to make people save money. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that used to be true, but I think that streaming gives you more bang for your buck. Whereas before you paid $150 a month for cable and you had these channels. And now you pay $150 a month, but you have literally an infinite amount of content.
Right, but the other thing is that to me it's like, okay, for Apple TV, you need your Apple TV device, and then for YouTube or Chromecast, you need the Chromecast device, and then
but that's not true. You can get YouTube TV on Apple.
For Amazon, you need your Amazon device as well. I mean, at the end of the day, you have so many, devices to be plugged into your TV and everything else. I mean, obviously, the smart TVs have with, the option to add Netflix and all these other things, but on the cable box, it's just a cable box. So, I mean, people were not. In fact, in the beginning, it was more about saving money, cutting the cord, basically saying, okay, cable, I'm tired of cable, because cable companies are notorious for the worst customer service you can have because they have this monopoly. Now they're trying to smooth it out and trying to compete more. But,
Yeah, but
like you said, it's not so much about saving money. It's just basically about having different options. Some more on-demand programming than anything else.
People are willing to spend money on entertainment. Like, you got to think about it. Like, honestly, these streaming services, it's incredible that they are so cheap, because for $7 a month, you get the entire Disney catalog for 100 years, and all of their new stuff.
The weakest link of all these services is that you rely on a high-speed internet connection.
Yeah, but these
days,
the
on top of that, you need to pay for that. Obviously, cable TV is cable TV, but now you need to have if you have all this 4K streaming and all that stuff, and then you don't. I mean, you're paying probably
4K
another.
4K is one thing, but most people don't stream 4K; they just stream HD. And
either way,
the market of if someone doesn't have high-speed internet, they're probably not your market anyways if you're a streaming service. So I don't think that's a good argument. Maybe when you start going international, but this idea that domestically in the US and Canada, in developed Europe, like that people are gonna unsubscribe from Netflix, I think it would take a lot for people to unsubscribe
let me ask
from
you,
Netflix. Especially, by the way, they have by far the highest content budget ever. And you mentioned before the podcast, well, they're losing a lot of deals with like big shows like The Office and Friends or whatever, right? And in Friends' case, they actually won it, but they spent a bunch of money. But anyways, I think that's a blessing in disguise for them, because that is a commodity. It's whoever's the highest bidder gets the rights to those shows. But Netflix is, if they're saving hundreds of millions on licensing, they can take that and build their own original shows that they own forever, and you can only get with a Netflix subscription. So now, the stock price, are they overvalued? Yeah, probably.
Well, most of the tech companies.
That's why they're going down. But and this is a whole different conversation. If they want to keep making more money, forget about the streaming revenue. I think the streaming revenue should pale in comparison to their merchandising revenue, but they haven't maximized that.
We discussed. And also, obviously, the fact that Netflix is not capitalizing on the merchandising and they're not doing anything on the side.
Disney
you did mention
is going to make a few billion a year from Disney Plus down the road, and that's great. But that's not their revenue driver. They have another $50 billion in revenue that they're going to get from all these other things based on the content that they make. So for Netflix, if they're making whatever, how many subscribers they have now? 120, 30?
Oh, Netflix? I don't know how many they have, but they added 8.7, almost 8 million.
They have
almost
like
9 million last
130 something million.
Oh, yeah. But that's worldwide.
If it's 130 million, yeah, like let's say the US, don't they have about like 70 million in the US roughly? If they have 70 million subscribers and each of them are paying whatever they pay,
at least 15 or
$13.
Yeah, it's 14, 15 or something.
If they pay
$150
a year,
the 4K or the other one is a little more expensive.
If they pay $150 a year on their streaming, those people could easily spend $150 a year separately on various merchandise, whatever, right? Disneyland, one trip to Disneyland for a family is like $600, okay? So or more. And so that pales in, that money is way more than the money they make from the monthly subscription. The monthly subscription should be a driver for other revenue channels, not your primary revenue channel. That's the biggest mistake Netflix
One side note, since we're talking about Disney, I'm actually right now reading the biography of Bob Iger, current CEO.
It's on my list.
Yeah, we both have it, I think.
I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list next.
I bought it before Christmas, and it's been kind of like waiting because I was in the middle of 3 other books. But now I'm reading it, and honestly, I didn't think it was going to be that great. Like, I've read a lot of, it's like, okay, this is another CEO about to retire, and with his biography.
Most of them are not good.
And no, it's really, really good. I definitely recommend it. I think it's a hell of a ride or something. What's it? I don't even know the title. I just call it Bob Iger biography, but it's really just the preface, the prologue of the his own little intro is amazing. I don't want to do any spoilers or anything, but I mean, from a person that started from the bottom of ABC, where he started working on ABC when it was ABC by itself, just a network, and before even Capital Cities on merging with ESPN and all that stuff, and obviously before the Disney negotiations. But anyways, it's a great book, great biography. I highly recommend it. Whether you like Disney or not, you're in the business or in business basically with any kind of entrepreneurial goals or anything, that is a whole lesson of people management, project management, crisis management, and basically all the above. So, quick note, back to the streaming comments that we're talking about. 5G. So 5G is coming. We don't know exactly. I mean, it's just being announced and all that, and it's there's some phone networks that are kind of announcing the pre-5G and all that. But how is that going to affect streaming in general? I mean, 5G is going to be significantly faster than the current 4G for those who have 4G. So I mean, it's a significant leap from what we had before, from 3G to 4G. 4G to 5G is like 100 times faster. But how is that going to affect streaming? And in most metro areas, the cable provider is also the internet provider, the service provider. So will that be the reason why people will finally just say, okay, screw my cable / internet, and I'm just going to use my 5G connection for everything?
Yeah, on the streaming side, I mean, it'll just make speeds faster, so it's good for streaming. But I think the bigger thing is, as you just said, that right now, most places, there's a monopoly of 1, 2, maybe 3 different ISPs, internet service providers, and typically they bundle the cable so that you can't really cut your cord without getting screwed on the internet cost. Once 5G comes, then ideally there will be many, many more providers, and they'll have a lot more competition, so they can't just gouge you on price. And you don't have, like, right now, basically, most people's internet is somehow commingled with their cable.
Right.
But it shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be.
Right.
It'll just
they tie you, they bundle it together,
right.
So you cannot.
They want to make more money.
Right.
But basically, right now, like for us in Phoenix, there's 2 major. There's Cox and CenturyLink, and CenturyLink sucks. They have terrible internet, and then that leaves you with Cox, who has good internet, but you can only. It doesn't make sense to not get cable because they just bundle it together,
right.
And if you get the internet alone, it costs just about as much as it does to get internet and cable. So once that is separated, then yes, I think you'll see a lot more cord cutters, and maybe more people will jump to just streaming. So it'll be good for the streaming services. I personally cannot wait for all of these shitty ISPs who just hold people over a barrel to go out of business, because they just screw people. They have terrible customer service. They don't care. They gouge you on prices. I can't wait.
Not to mention that you're late a couple of days and they cut you off. Like, as we know very well. I mean, I personally hate Cox, which is the one that we have in Arizona. Is the worst customer service, the worst website. You try to pay online, you can even find a way to pay your freaking bill, for that matter. But then if you don't pay it, which they don't even send you a letter or reminders or anything, they just cut you off in the middle of the evening, obviously when you're watching TV, and you have to call them up and pay and all that stuff. So it's all happened to me. So this is one other topic that I know you don't kind of want to get deep into it, but I really want to discuss privacy as far as phones, devices, and everything else. As you know, well, first of all, there's been news now in different media outlets about, you remember when Jeff Bezos' phone was hacked? That was about 2 years ago. I think it was 2018 when he was blackmailed and all that, with the whole fiasco that happened and his divorce and all that too. But anyways, apparently now they are thinking that Saudi Arabia was involved with that. And the reason why they think that is because he and the crown prince of Saudi Arabia had a meeting, and they were exchanging phone numbers and all that stuff. And then apparently Saudi Arabia was not very happy with how the Washington Post, which is now owned obviously by Jeff Bezos, was reporting or writing news about Saudi Arabia, basically. So they wanted to pseudo blackmail him or make him soften the stand about Saudi Arabia, and they allegedly the crown prince of Saudi Arabia sent him a WhatsApp message that was basically infected with malware to hack into his phone, and then they were able to basically get into all his information, pictures, and everything else. So it's getting to a point where the United Nations now is trying to investigate further into that situation and see if it's true or not. So that's one point that we're talking about, privacy and all that stuff for the phone devices or the mobile devices. And then in addition to that, we have also the controversy now again, even though it happened 3 years ago between Apple and the FBI and the government and the Attorney General and other stuff, basically trying to get Apple to open up their iPhones for situations where there's national security, terrorism, or something like that to get into that information. So Apple obviously had a very strong stand on privacy. They've announced it before. They even reinforced it at the recent CES show in Las Vegas. They have billboards saying we care about your privacy and all the stuff. And but at the same time, they do have a little known loophole through their iCloud where they have these encryption keys that they have the keys to decrypt basically consumer information. If the consumer loses their password or something, they say, okay, we only keep it for those extreme situations where the actual user needs it to get back to their phone. So what's your take on all this as far as where you think privacy should stop or continue, or what is your take as far as Apple's stand, and basically at what point do you draw the line between privacy and protecting U.S. citizens?
I'm on Apple's side. I think it'd be a different circumstance if the FBI and NSA and all these agencies had a great record of never infringing on people's privacy rights and following by the book and being very clean. But they've lost all trust I have in them. I don't trust the FBI or the NSA at all. So no, I don't want to give them just free reign to go and get into anybody's phone, innocent or not, warrant or not. No.
Well, I mean, in Apple's defense, I mean, they have a contract with their users where they basically say, we're going to preserve your privacy. You're trusting us with you're basically using our phone, and we, in exchange, we guarantee that your information on your phone is kept private. So, I mean, that's one thing. Now, I understand also the other position saying, okay, well, in this case, we're talking about a criminal terrorist act or a person that actually committed a crime that we know. It's not like he's innocent and proven guilty or anything like that. In this case, we know the person basically is guilty, committed a crime, killed himself committing the crime, and then we have the phone. We just want to have access to how this thing developed. So it's no different than coming to to your home or something and say, hey, we have a warrant because we have it significant suspicious that you're being involved in some crime or something. I want to search your house.
Yeah, but the difference is that what this would allow the FBI to do is to get into anybody's house without a warrant and without them even knowing. Imagine if the FBI could come, I mean, technically they probably could, in the middle of the night, come into your house, search everything, leave. By the time you wake up in the morning, you have no idea it happened and they didn't need a warrant, nothing. Mm-hmm. That is not allowed. And that is what would happen if Apple just gave them access to decrypt anyone's phone.
But as you know, because Apple has these decrypting keys for consumers for iCloud backups and things like that, don't you think there's a risk also that those keys could end up in the wrong hands as well?
Of course. I don't think that they should be, the reason you encrypt things. But
like when this happened 3 years ago.
There's two conversations here. Should Apple be keeping all of this? No, probably not. Should they give access to the FBI? No. Like, that's two different conversations. Two wrongs don't make a right.
But what happened, like, you remember about 3 years ago when we had the San Bernardino shootings and all that stuff, with the same situation happened.
And I was on Apple's side too.
Right, understood. But what happened is that the government ended up going to an Israeli company to basically hack the iPhone, which they ended up doing. But you think, okay, why do we need to go to pay an Israeli company to do that when we could have done it locally?
If the government wants to go around and do black hat methods and break the law, then they can do that and face consequences that come up. But Apple should not do it. Apple should not give access to the FBI. I mean, like I said, I'm sorry, but the FBI, the NSA, and all these agencies have lost all goodwill with the American people at this point. I just think that there's no reason that any American would be willing to trust that, we're going to give this to the FBI, this amazingly powerful tool, and we're going to trust that they never use it maliciously. Sorry, I don't have that trust, and I don't think anybody has that trust. And it's just a matter of, there's a famous platitude that was from the founding fathers that is, I'd rather see 100 guilty men go innocent than one guilty man, than one innocent man be guilty. And that's this case.
Right.
Just because one person is guilty does not mean that now all the tens of millions of Americans with iPhones should have all of their data and privacy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
upon.
think that's ever going to be the case, but there's some
Because
extenuating circumstances that maybe warrant that kind of exception.
When you think about it, sometimes a phone these days, we call it a phone, but it's almost like a second brain for people.
Well, it's your,
it's all of your communications with people.
Accounting information, banking information.
You have your personal notes and ideas and diaries and whatever. It's almost as if the FBI had free reign on just tapping into anyone's mind.
It's more than a person's wallet.
It's like a Minority Report type thing. I don't want that.
Right. And obviously, we're not talking that they're just going to go to everybody's phone. It's just saying, okay, in this case, we have this situation. We know these guys committed this act. We have their phones. Can we get to them? And I remember in the case of the San Bernardino shootings, they had this enabled the 10 attempts to enter the passcode or the passcode, the 4-digit. And then after that, the phone actually wipes out. I have that on my phone too. So they were afraid that they were going to run out of options, and then the whole information was going to be reset.
Okay.
So I mean, there's.
What do you think Apple should do? I give my opinion.
It's tough. I mean, I think it needs to be pre-established from the beginning, so people know what their rights are. And if Apple is saying we're going to preserve your privacy, obviously that's basically the way it should be. But at the same time, I think when you commit a crime and you're in cases you're already proven guilty and they know there's no doubt about you committing the crime, I mean, basically you even killed yourself committing the crime. So I can see that could be a case for saying, okay, well, we can get into this person's phone,
Right, but just because one person or a few people commit a crime, and use the phone as a tool doesn't mean that all of a sudden the FBI should be able to just
no, I'm not saying that's what I'm saying.
Unwarranted go into anybody's phone anytime they want without you even knowing.
Right. No. But that's the thing. It should be something that within the privacy terms, it should be something that your privacy is preserved.
In an ideal world, you would say.
Of course, if they say, they have a billboard saying, "We care about your privacy, iPhone." Beautiful. That's a one headline that sells phones. If you were to say, "We care about your privacy, except you commit a crime, in which case we may actually have to go into your phone," and that will not sell a phone.
It's a slippery slope.
Well,
because
of course,
in this case, I agree. Okay, it's very plain and clear, the situation. The guy is guilty. But, as you know, not all cases are universal. In most cases, it's not always clear who's guilty. Okay, that's why we have trials. That's why we have evidence.
Of course.
But my point is that you can't just give them this powerful tool and then expect that, but they're super honest and perfect and they would never abuse their power.
But nobody's giving them a tool. Nobody's giving them a tool.
That's what it is.
No, there's no tool. There's basically
it's precedent, because if they do it now, then it sets precedent for any time the FBI says, "Hey, we need to look at this guy's phone." Then they can.
But the tool exists. That's the key part.
Fine, but it's not from Apple. If they want to do black hat methods, of course, okay. If you want to get around Apple's security, you're never gonna stop that, okay? Companies have security. You can have.
But Apple also, like I said, they have the decrypting keys because they said that for the users in case they.
I'm not talking about Apple. I'm not talking about whether that's right or not. I'm talking about should Apple let the FBI through a back door? Mm-hmm. I think no.
No, I agree. I mean, privacy is privacy, and either you have it or you don't. I mean, that's basically it. So, but there has to be a unified, like the U.S. is one of the few civilized countries that doesn't have a unified privacy law. Like we get all these things from Europe, like GDPRs and this and that, and they have a unified privacy. Obviously, the government gets there or whatever, but whatever the law is, it needs to be unified, so you don't leave it up to each individual company.
I don't think that's true. I think can have.
Yeah.
I think states should have their laws. I think the federal government should not be involved. I think the states should have their laws. Okay, so if you live in California, which just passed the CCPA, then that's your law. But if you don't like the CCPA, then you don't have to live in California. That's the reason why we have states.
Well, it's not that California people don't like the CCPA, it's that it affects everybody else, obviously, doing business with California.
Yeah, of
and
course.
then it just becomes like like here, if every state has a different law, you have 50 states. I mean, you can imagine, even for websites, we're going to have like 50 disclaimers. Oh, you're in California, you have this, but you're in Arizona, you do this. I mean, it's crazy. Anyways, let's move on. Actually, there's one thing that is a much lighter note. As you know, this podcast is brought to you by MGR Agency, which is our parent company. But we were just kind of jokingly the other day. Actually, you told me the highest revenue, the podcast rank by revenue. Remember that? Yeah. And I was like,
yeah, that came out yesterday, I think.
Okay, so obviously podcasting is really, really popular these days. There's a lot of very, very good podcasts out there, and some others are not so good or very more niche, and we're trying to create ours as well. But what are the top? Do you remember the top 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yeah, I think I remember. So it was number 1 was Joe Rogan. I think no surprise there. This is revenue generation.
So
podcasts.
that's from advertising?
Yeah, pretty much. Basically,
Okay.
which podcast made the most money?
I mean, there's a lot of podcasts, including this one, that don't do any advertising, or they basically, we don't have any advertising or sponsors or anything. So obviously,
But this includes like making money in other ways too. This is basically, it's mostly just based on who are the most popular podcasts, because obviously the more popular you are, the more money you make. But essentially, it was number 1.
Joe Rogan.
Experience. Pretty obvious. I think most people would have guessed that. Number 2 was New York Times, The Daily.
That one we're surprised about.
Oh, no, I'm not surprised. I
Really?
mean, it's the most popular, probably mainstream media podcast.
Because I was subscribed to the Wall Street Journal daily.
Yeah, but the Wall Street Journal is much smaller than
And
New York
then
Times.
I wasn't even impressed with that one. In fact, the podcast is like a little brief in the mornings. And it's a quick thing. It's maybe like a 10-minute little podcast in the mornings. And out of the 10 minutes, they had like 5 minutes of commercials and then 5 minutes of news. And it was so intrusive that I said,
Well, I don't listen to
this
The
stuff.
Daily, but I don't know. Maybe it's better. But basically, that was number 2. Number 3 was Ben Shapiro, like the polar opposite of The Daily. Number 4, who's number 4?
Bill Simmons or
No, Bill Simmons was number 6. Oh, that's right.
Ramsey?
I believe Pardon My Take,
Oh,
which
the
was Barstool Sports'
Barstool
podcast.
Sports that we were talking about too.
Number 5 was Conan O'Brien's podcast, and number 6 was Bill Simmons. I think that was what it was. But basically, my point was that I made to you, as I said, that kind of shows you how incredible the new, the current era we are in, because essentially podcasting is like the new radio type thing.
Yeah,
it's actually
radio on demand, basically.
It's radio on demand. It's more distributed too, because you don't need to be you can get it anywhere. It's not like you need to be in your car or have a radio player. But out of the top 6, 4 are essentially independent media or new media.
Right.
Joe Rogan, Barstool Sports, which is a new media, Ben Shapiro, and Bill Simmons. Right, the only 2 are obviously the New York Times and then Conan O'Brien, who comes from Legacy. But those are of the top 6, 4 were basically born on the internet.
And what is interesting to me is that 2 of those, Barstool Sports and Bill Simmons, who's basically
The Ringer,
the part of the Ringer, but he's the one who does mostly sports podcasting. They're above ESPN. ESPN has a number of podcasts. I mean, most of the most famous TV shows are simulcast on podcasting or radio, and then they have a podcast version.
Yeah, and then why do you think Conan started a podcast? Because he's smart and realized, hey, you know what? Way more people listen to podcasts than watch late night television.
Well, yeah, he was on TBS or TNT in Turner,
TBS.
and so he has more listeners on the podcast than viewers on TV.
Way more.
Incredible.
Like, Joe Rogan, I think, is kind of, a lot of people say he's like the modern late night talk show. Obviously, it's a totally different format, but he's a comedian, funny guy who interviews lots of people. That's what late night talk shows are, right? But the viewership, the most popular, I believe, is Colbert right now. And then, but you have, Colbert, Fallon, Kimmel, all these guys.
Right.
Joe Rogan's listenership, it's not even close.
Right.
It's not even close.
And obviously, most of them, like we do, they also have the YouTube version of the podcast,
Yes.
which basically you want to watch it, you can just obviously
Jimmy
watch the
Fallon
video.
actually is really smart because I read this the other day that it was someone who was on his digital media team, and they basically said that Jimmy is like all in on digital because he knows.
Right.
Basically, they do a really good job of, and actually it comes a little bit at the cost of their main show, where a lot of people don't even like watching the real show live,
Right.
Because it's very segmented. They have this segment interview, then they do a little game, then they do this. But why do they do that?
Because
they take all
he
those,
chops it up, and they
put
are
it
like
into 5-minute clips, and put it on
YouTube videos.
YouTube, and
Right.
they get millions and millions of
Right,
views.
right.
But that's the new format, and he's mastering that. He's blending the traditional with the modern. Conan obviously said, I'm just going to do, instead of being limited to a 15-minute interview on the show with commercial breaks, I'm just going to do hour-long interviews with people on my podcast.
People like the long format interviews, and that's the reason why even now in the election year that we are, all the political candidates prefer to go to these major mainstream podcasts because they can speak for an hour actually explaining their policy versus the political debates where they have a 30-second soundbite and then they get rebuttal stuff
All
and they
of
just use a
them-
collection of soundbites.
all of the, like, speaking of Joe Rogan, all of the Democratic candidates have asked to be on his show. Did you know
Right,
that? Did
yeah.
you hear that?
Yeah.
I didn't
Well,
realize.
he has
Obviously,
like millions of downloads. I mean, it's more
tens of millions.
Yeah, I mean, the debates are actually going down in viewership one after another.
not to
The
mention-
last one, people even didn't know there was a debate anymore.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it was like, oh man, there's another.
I know,
debate.
it's like
Wow.
another one, and then you see
It's like, what more do they have to talk
They
about?
started with 20, and now we're down to like 5 or 6 or something.
But the point is, like, on a debate, you get at most 20 minutes to talk, and it's fragmented.
oh yeah,
between
and
questions.
uninterrupted and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
In this one, you get a one-on-one interview, and he'd had Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, Andrew Yang. I think that was it. Did he have anybody else? But
Yeah.
anyways, he said that Biden
Yeah.
and Buttigieg
Warren.
and all these guys,
Yeah.
and Warren asked,
Yeah.
but he was like, I'm okay. But that tells you the power that he and the modern new media have of that. The old school want to be on his podcast,
Right.
And it's funny. Look at New York Times. In their case, they've actually done really well in the digital adaptation. Their stock is up 10x from 10 years ago. And if you look at, like, okay, for example, the New York Times Daily podcast gets way more listeners than like a CNN show or MSNBC or any of their direct competitors, right? Because obviously New York Times leans towards a liberal audience, and then MSNBC and CNN are targeting that
and
audience
also the
too.
fact that
And Ben Shapiro too.
Yeah,
Ben Shapiro's
yeah.
more on the right.
Right.
He gets way more than Fox News. Like, new media is just beating the hell
well,
out
but
of
then
old
also
media.
keep in mind that the podcasting format has become so much more mainstream. Before it was like a very sophisticated way to create a podcast RSS feed, so it was very complicated. Now, pretty much, it's very simple, and the podcast networks have increased a lot. I mean, you have a lot of, like, Spotify now is becoming a major podcasting platform. Obviously, you had Apple, iTunes, formerly iTunes, now Apple Podcast, and you have Google Play. You have a lot of different channels to get your podcast wherever you want, and just drive around, and instead of having radio in your car or something, just listen to a podcast working out. It's a much more on-demand listening experience where you have the ability to listen to a long format interview as opposed to just be reduced to quick sound bites and quick interviews, because then you have a commercial break or something. Morning TV is the same thing. All the Today shows and all that, they have these little quick snippets where they're launching a movie or releasing a movie. You have the actors go there, they have like 3-4 lines on the commercial break, and then you have the same actor just interview in a podcast, and they give you everything, all the information behind the scenes, funny parts, all that stuff is really much more enlightening for the viewership or for the listener. All right, I think that's everything I have for today.
I think we covered everything.
Anything else you'd like to add?
That's it for me.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks for joining me today. This is like a bonus for me because like I said, I wasn't even expecting to be recording this week. I'll be.
I'm glad I twisted your arm into doing it.
Strong arm. No, I'll be heading over to California this weekend. I'll be posting some stuff on my personal Instagram account. I'll be racing with a couple of buddies there, and we'll definitely be back next week again with another episode. And that's it for now.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye bye.